Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the main event of the evening.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
We're back. It's kind of funny. One of these days, we're going to be experts at every avenue that is social media, like streaming. You know that?
Yes.
It's awesome. Hey, nonetheless, listeners, thank you guys and viewers if you're watching this. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And this is a weekly call-in show that we don't take calls on right now, which is kind of funny and silly. But there are a few different ways you can get on if you'd like to, maybe request a question or submit one through the Facebook feed or the other social media links. That'd be great. We will be having the call-in ability here shortly once we master all avenues. That is the hurdles of I guess producing this show.
Jump on our Facebook page. You can post there. You can email us with questions or comments.
But in the meantime, we'd love to have you guys just jump in and listen to a little bit of the feedback that we've received from you, the viewers and listeners. And specifically, if you have questions about addiction recovery, mental health, or relationship issues, family issues, sports athletics, whatever it is, this is your ticket to maybe ask some good advice and to seek some clarification. Blu Robinson here, mental health therapist, addiction counselor, head coach of Team Addict to Athlete.
Marissa Robinson, certified recreational therapist.
And the brains of this organization right there.
Yeah.
So glad to have you guys here today. Marissa, before we jump into the thick of things, coming off the heels of everyone's favorite holiday, Valentine's Day, which is weird. Is that a holiday or is it like an observance or because calling it a holiday is kind of interesting because not a lot of stuff comes with that holiday.
It depends on who you are, but I don't know.
Do you think there are any die-hard Valentine's Day fans? They're just I can't sleep on the 13th of February because tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Is anyone like that?
Yes.
You do? You think so?
I think our 12-year-old was this year.
Well, I take that back. Our 12-year-old was, yeah. He's got himself a Valentine. Nonetheless,
oh my goodness, that was crazy.
Before we jump into that, would you mind thanking all of our Patreon subscribers? It is you, the Patreon subscribers, that allow us to push this podcast out further. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon and supporting the Addict to Athlete podcast, it's super easy. You jump on patreon.com/addicttoathlete where you'll find all of our bonus content, depending on what tier you decide you want to invest in. Come with all kinds of perks and merchandise and features that will be exclusively given to you. So who do we have on this list and who are those beautiful people we can thank?
We'll start in the middle and go out.
Let's do it.
Today we want to thank our rookie level Patreons, Sione and Mary Inuk, Sherry Polson, Earl Dyer, and Wendell Wood. Our pro level, Andrew Baird and Gary Thurston. Super fans, Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Tracy Whitby, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Brett Frew, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, and Christy Case. And our champion level subscribers are the Robinson family and Ron and Deloche.
Coach D up there in God's country. I love it. Thank you all so much for your contributions. Guys. It really does help. Again, if you want to jump on and check it out, $2 a month can give you all of our bonus content, which is a heck of a deal these days. Inflation has not hit the Patreon subscribing list.
And you can even do pay in advance and get a discount on the $2 a month.
It's almost silly not to.
Yeah.
Right? You can do that by going to patreon.com/addicttoathlete. And while you're there surfing the interwebs, jump on addicttoathlete.org to watch and see all of our content. We got all kinds of stuff on there for recovery resources, a backlog podcast, our team store, our certified coaching program. It's all there, addicttoathlete.org.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, before I lose my voice because it's cold flu season number 3 coming around my body here. Last night was awesome. We talked a little bit about learning how to love and appropriately offered to the team on Valentine's Day, which was again an interesting holiday.
Great meeting topic.
Absolutely. And so, because of that, I wanted to share with you guys a little bit deeper insight with what it truly means to learning how to love. And I preface this, Marissa, with I guess the mindset. And if you have a loved one who struggled with addiction or you yourself have, or mental health for that matter, any kind of thing like that, you'll know that if there's a point in time by which your relationship took some sucker punches and some hits, or maybe even ended, it's kind of hard for the person who struggled with that addiction or mental health issue to feel as though they have any more left in them to offer love or to receive love. A lot of times they look at themselves as, who would want to invest in this hot mess, right?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting premise, listeners, because when you boil that down, why is it that we've closed the door on that? Is it, because we feel inadequate? Is it because we are self-taught and self-believing mentality that no one can love me? Or is it the fear of possibly getting, hurt again? What have you noticed in that arena of who's going to want to date or marry this person with all this baggage?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of those things, whether it's, self-esteem for themselves, or they've been through bad, intense, struggles with relationships. And I think when we discuss and we talk about love, it's not just romantic love. It's not just, love is, I think, one of the primary emotions that we have, because we're human beings and relationships are part of what life is about. But yeah, people are hurt in many different ways, and then usually that has them close off. Yeah,
absolutely. And this is why Valentine's Day is problematic for a lot of folks out there who maybe have been promised a certain kind of love and that hasn't quite panned out. And so, one of the heartbreaking things that I've been through with several folks throughout my therapeutic involvement with them was that factor of, once they've had this deep love and these eternal promises and the things that they really did truly feel or believe were in the cards for them, when that doesn't come to light because of a spouse's choices or behaviors, it makes trusting another and investing in someone else a lot more challenging and difficult.
Oh, for sure.
You can boil that right down to even some simpler things for some of us, which is, how do you bring in another pet once a pet dies, right? I mean, we have the capacity in our heart for a lot of love, but when we've been constantly dealt, love in an unhealthy or unsatisfactory manner, it really does, bring up some questions about, what should I be doing here?
Yeah.
So, we talk about this a lot, Marissa, this 3 stages of love, and I really do, I think, premise a lot of couples counseling on this.
Yes.
And the 3 stages of love go as follows, and some of you guys have heard this before, but it's worth the recap, and that's that first stage, that initial, interaction, that falling in love stage. How would you describe the falling in love stage? Everyone goes through it.
So my mom used to call it Twitterpation. It's just usually really extreme, strong emotions. It's intense. It's very,
Wow, that was
strong,
pretty deep.
Deep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, since I'm the romantic in the relationship, let me tell you what it really is, okay? Falling in love is the greatest thing ever. It's that rapid heartbeat. It's that excitement. The phone rings, you see the name on the phone, and you're like, hey, what's going on? Or a text message, back and forth now. Thank heavens we didn't have that back in the year 1998, 99 when we were dating, because, then you had to text, and it was you paid 10 cents per text if you went over a certain amount. We would have been way in debt.
Well, we had pagers though. And remember, we would send secret messages through pages, because you also you were limited on your characters, right?
Yep.
If I remember right.
Yeah, the 3-stroke keypad that was kind of challenging back then, and you needed one of those decipher rings from the Christmas Story where you drink your Ovaltine to decipher the messages. But that falling in love stage, you guys, it is so awesome. It is so beautiful because, again, it is excitement. It's I've got this new person in my life. She's beautiful. He's attractive. He's funny. We're doing all this stuff together.
Everything's perfect.
Yeah, back in the day, on the phone for hours, and I mentioned this last night, back in the real old days when you had a phone tethered to the wall and that really long phone cord that would always get knotted up and balled up. Yeah. You could follow it, down the kitchen, down the hall into someone's bedroom.
Yeah.
Which was always kind of funny. And you're just on the phone with that person for hours, right? And it's you fall asleep on the phone, and it just feels amazing. Now, eventually, they call it stage 1 for a reason. You're going to move out of it.
Yeah.
And it could last, that stage 1 falling in love could be literally, months, years, hours, minutes. Yeah. But eventually, you're going to come out of that. And everyone that I've known has fallen into stage 2.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite of falling in love. It's falling out of love.
Yeah.
So this is where it starts getting interesting in relationships. So eloquently did you describe stage 1. What do you think about stage 2?
So stage 2 is more of a separation. It's where, maybe the mask, in stage 1, you usually present your best self and you want to show off everything that's perfect about you because they're showing off their perfection. And that's when you maybe start finding out they're not as perfect as you once thought, and you're not. And maybe some of the secrets come out. Maybe the masks that you've been hiding, trying to present a certain way, start being seen. And there's like, maybe things aren't great. Some of those intense feelings start coming down and aren't as strong. And so often people look at that as, that means I don't like this person anymore. It's not working out. It's not going well.
Let's do it. Let's talk about those masks for a moment, because stage 1 always happens obviously at the beginning of the relationship. And like I said, it's great. If stage 1 takes you all the way through courtship and then into engagement and marriage,
a few years,
might be a problem. It's like this. It's like, stage 2, the masks come off like Marissa said. I wore a very heavy mask. And I wore a mask on top of that mask and a mask on top of that mask. And as they constantly
Layers
got peeled away, as like they got peeled away, the more vulnerable I felt, which meant the more belief I had that once you got to the real person here, you'd look at him and be, hey, Quasimodo, kick rocks, right? Like, what the F is this? But let me tell you a little bit about stage 2, guys, is stage 2 that takes years to develop. Or to understand can be super problematic, because this is where you have gone to a point where your relationship has become unsynced and it's become a little bit maybe unbalanced, and we stay together for the kids because that's always the right thing to do, right?
No.
And one day the last kid moves out and you look at your spouse and you're like, I'm not in love with you anymore. And that could have been as evidenced by they call it the dead bedroom syndrome, where there hasn't been any intimate relationship in years, and it's kind of just written off as, well, we're both busy, or it's these changes I'm having.
Start doing things more for the kids and out of responsibility, jobs, other things that you just slowly drift apart.
So we're on the topic. If you have any younger kids, maybe, if you're driving, don't do this. Maybe drop them off on the corner, or if they're around you, put your fingers in their ears. But talking about the physical intimacy, the sexual relationship that you have with your spouse or partner, falling out of love is very obvious and very, I guess, poignant when you start realizing that those intimate connections are no longer being made. And there's a very distinct reason as to why that's not happening in your relationship. And it's not, it's not to, I guess, these days it is. It's still very taboo to be talking about sex, even as adults. And one thing that I've noticed about healthy relationships are you can talk about and converse about anything, including this. Now, there's a bunch of factors that go into this too. There are careers, there are stressors, there are personal issues that people carry around, from body image issues to to just feelings of being used instead of like you're right,
illness, financial responsibilities. All of a sudden, those other things fall to the wayside for sure.
Absolutely, and I don't truly believe that when we find ourselves in that falling out of love stage, that we identify the real core reasons with this. We try to blame shift and point fingers. But the physical intimacy between couples and spouse, that is a huge component to this part. And it's interesting we talk about needs versus wants and those kind of things. I've had family systems that I've worked with in the past that have literally scheduled like sexual relationships with their spouse, and that's an interesting thing too, because that turns into this, this task to be mastered instead of, this connection or union to be made.
Yeah.
But you have to understand why the dead bedroom syndrome also carries over into other aspects of life, from you don't notice me anymore, or, it seems like you're always, preoccupied with your phone or your television or the games or the golf course, whatever it is. Yeah. We're not getting to the core of the real issue.
I think there's often a lot of assuming, because people then don't want to ask questions or talk about it. And so they just try to guess. And we've said a million times, when you try to guess what somebody else is thinking, you usually guess wrong. And so you have to talk. and discuss.
But what happens when, and this happens a lot. It's even happened with you and I, where I've been almost afraid to talk to you about the issue or the situation because I'm afraid or worried, or those out there are afraid to, or worried about, like, well, maybe this will be the nail that drives the coffin shut.
Yeah.
Or maybe this will be like, taking out of context and it'll look like all I want is sex in the relationship.
Yeah.
When we start putting up these stone walls and these roadblocks to communications, what ultimately always happens?
It's going to fail because, again, you start guessing, or then you have had so many times that you have maybe brought things up and it's gone bad and there's been fighting or anger or hurt feelings, resentment, that then you just withhold things. Mm-hmm. And then there's even more, pain and suffering on one side or the other. And it just causes a wedge.
So look at this in terms of relationship, investment. And the interesting thing is, I use Dr. Paul's theory of the box system, right? Yeah. But we'll call it for this purpose, we'll call it the slot machine syndrome. Okay. So listeners, let's say that you're out there in fill in the blank, whatever, Morocco, because that sounds kind of cool. You're at the casino in Morocco. Yeah. You walk into that said casino, and all you hear is all the bells and whistles and lights and drop and change. People in there are winning big time. So you rush over to the first machine you see, and man, you are heavy laden with your last paycheck, and let's say you have thousands of dollars to invest, and so you're not going for the quarter machines, you're going for the dollar machines, right?
Big time.
In fact, you know what? Let's even do this. You're going for the $100 machines because you're in Morocco. Right? Yeah. Let's do this. So you sit down at that first machine, you put in your $100 bill, you pull the handle, all the bells and the whistles, and out comes nothing. You're like, well, hey, no problem. I am a high roller. So you stick another $100 in there, you pull the handle, all the bells and whistles, and out comes
nothing.
Nothing again. Third time is absolutely a charm, right? So you put that third $100 bill in, you pull the handle, all the bells and whistles, and boom, nothing. But that's an odd number, and you can't stop gambling on an odd number. Yeah. So you put another $100 in, pull the handle, all the bells and whistles, out comes $0. Yeah. Fifth time, you've got to do this. I mean, come on. It's going to pay out.
Yeah, odd number.
Okay. Absolutely. And bells and whistles, out comes $0. How long would you seriously want to stay at a machine that is just sucking in all your money and producing nothing in return?
Yeah. I mean, you're going to try it a while because then you think, well, if I keep losing, then I have to win sometime.
The odds, right?
But,
let's say you're $3,000 into this,
do it very
right?
Long.
You're $3K into it, and you're just like, come on. And maybe for a long time, you just really love the bells, the whistles, and the lights, right? And every once in a while, someone brings you a drink, and you're like, I don't ever have to leave.
Yeah.
Well, eventually, that person next to you, flutters away, and you slide over to that machine because you noticed that there was something different about that machine. So you slide over to that machine, you put your $100 in, you pull the handle, the bells and whistles, and out comes $100. Now we're talking. You put in another $100, you pull the handle, bells and whistles, out comes
$100.
$100.
Okay.
Wait a second.
You think maybe I'm getting ahead?
Yeah, but are you?
But no, I guess you were losing before, but now you're still just...
So how much better is machine number 2 than machine number 1?
Exchanging the same $100, right?
Yeah, maybe you look at the $100 bill, you put it in, pull the handle, out comes $100. Like, is this the same? Right?
One just going in and out?
But it's still better than the first machine, okay?
Yeah.
Eventually, however long, maybe you invested another $10K into that one. Mm-hmm. But really, it's just $100. So you really didn't invest anything, you got anything in return. It's just same. Even Stevens.
Yeah.
You slide over to number 3 because that one finally comes available because the person at that one dropped dead and you're like, okay, I'm going to move into this one.
Okay.
Right? You put your $100 into machine number 3. You pull the handle. All the same bells, all the same whistles, but out comes $200.
Well, that's good.
Wait a second.
That's really good.
You try it again, right?
Yeah.
You put $100 in, pull the handle, bells and whistles.
All right.
Another $200. Like, wait a second. So you put those $200 in, you pull the handle, out comes $400.
Wow.
You put the 400 in, pull the handle, out comes 800. See where this is going?
Yeah.
It's a flipping increase every time. You invest more, you get more in return.
That's nice.
I'm never leaving, right?
That's amazing.
Why do we talk about the box theory? Why do we talk about the bells and the whistles? What is it really?
Yeah, so if you relate it to relationships, how much are you gambling when you have relationships? And again, this doesn't have to be, a romantic partner. This can be friends. This can be coworkers. This can be people you meet. How long do you invest in those relationships that are just leaving you more empty than when, you got there? So it's the $100 in, nothing comes out. How long do you stay in the investment in the relationships where you put 100 in, you get 100 back?
Yep.
Versus you put 100 in, you get 200 back.
Well, think about that. How many relationships do we know of people that have literally given and given and given and got nothing in return?
Yeah.
And it's like, you have your role, I have my role, and so you're like, I'm going to do something special. You invest and nothing in return.
Yeah.
But we're like, wait a minute, but this machine has to. I remember this was a relationship I had with my mom. I've talked about it till I'm dead and literally blue in the face. And it's like, I could invest in her and get nothing in return. So why in the crud do I keep investing? Because hopefully one day I'm going to get the lottery and it's all going to come flooding out. But it never does.
Yeah.
And it happens in relationships. Like you said, it happens in coworkers and friends. We all have friends that we've invested in and that we've been there for. And then when we have the problem, they're like, you're on your own, man. I'm over here doing this.
Yeah.
So why do we get suckered into putting that emotional investment into these people and we get nothing in return? Because there's always that hope that maybe this time will be the one we win. That number 2 is awesome too, because that's kind of that cohabitation. That's this for that. That's a quid pro quo relationship, right?
You get something, I get something.
And you could be happy with that. You could be very happy with that kind of relationship. But if you find yourself in a situation by which you can invest and get double in return.
If you knew that those were relationships out there, that's incredible.
And you take that double and you invest that back to that person, and then they give you quadruple back.
Yeah.
And then you yourself start doing that. I mean, can you imagine? Yeah, you can, because that's stage 3. After we leave that falling out of love stage, if we come to an understanding, if we get the counseling, if we get the communication back online, if we start remembering why we fell in love in the first place, we can move to stage 3. But remember, most of you out there don't realize stage 3 exists because you want to go back to stage 1 where you were falling in love, because remember how great that was?
Yeah.
It's impossible, though. You can never go back there because you know too much now. But stage 3, learning how to love someone and learning how to be loved from someone, that is where that box number 3 really comes into play. Yeah. How so?
Because that's where you give everything and the other person does, and it lifts you up. It's a relationship where you're progressing and you're both improving rather than just giving and taking, that you're kind of just staying level, but you're both improving. And the emotions may not be as intense and as strong as falling in love, but long-term longevity, depth, is going to be way better every time.
I was watching some YouTube videos preparing for yesterday's lesson, and I come across the longest married couple in the world. Guess how many years?
I don't.
71 years of marriage.
Holy cow.
And these two were just like old, feeble, and a stiff wind could take them away, but they still absolutely love one another.
Yeah.
And, she comes up with a walker, takes her about 15 minutes to get over to him from the couch to the chair. And she's like, I'm going to get some water. And he says, well, can I have a kiss on the cheek so I don't forget you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what?
Yeah.
So I'm watching that and I'm looking at this and I'm like, where do we go wrong? Where do we go wrong when marriages, relationships, friendships, when they fail?
Yeah.
Listeners, look in the mirror. 100%.
Yeah.
Which is crazy when you're like, well, wait a minute, my spouse cheated on me and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you're not responsible for that. But what you are responsible for is you.
Yeah.
To recognize, is this person going to change? Am I investing in someone that's giving me nothing back? And if they're not giving me anything back, do they realize that they're not doing that? If they don't realize that they're doing that, how do we get them to understand where I'm coming from? And this is where thinking and feeling kind of cross over. And we've got to get to that raw point of understanding where we truly are in the relationship, which means that you have to understand that choosing not to love someone is very trying on yourself. I mean, think about that. To go out of your way to not love someone.
Put up those protective barriers to keep yourself safe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's harder,
But what I've also known is that means you've also fallen out of love with yourself. You're forgetting about what makes you you and who you are authentically. Now, I am a proponent for people staying together and going through the hard stuff together if both people are willing to accept their own responsibilities.
Yeah.
Because there's not a person out there that doesn't realize that part of the system and the problem is what they're contributing to the relationship in. husbands come home and they're out in the garage, they're drinking the beer, they're, never wanting to go anywhere, they're not wanting to do anything, they're they don't see that their spouse or their wife or their husband, whatever, is kind of aching to go explore or to do whatever. Why? Because they stopped talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of that childhood trauma we've talked about in the past comes bubbling up, and so we isolate, we kind of, slow ourselves down. That stage of development we talk about all the time, that isolation versus intimacy is very much in play here. And so we do that.
People hold back and don't show all the things that they're thinking or don't think they're worthy enough, so they present something that's a false person.
Exactly. So and choosing not to love, what does that do to a person?
Well, human beings have to have connection. We have to have relationships. And I think there's not a way to have relationships that are any kind of high quality if you don't love, whether it's friendships or, like I even said, coworkers or other romantic relationships. We have to be able to show and express love, to be able to give to other people, to receive. It goes everywhere. It's what I think creates and enhances life, is relationships.
Absolutely. And so when we get in those kind of mindsets, we start looking at the scarcity of it all. It's no wonder that we tuck that away. And then who does it affect most? You.
Yeah.
So looking at how loving also can deprive others of your love is kind of crucial, because think about that. If you have a relationship by which you've kind of fallen out of love with and you've forgotten what authentic love is, how are you going to give that to anyone else?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about again, intimate love. I'm talking about relationship love, like connection with people.
Yeah.
Everyone in this world deserves to feel loved and to be loved. And if you hold too much of that inside and you don't give that to others, you're going to mislabel and misunderstand what love authentically is. And I use this a lot. It's like me walking around forcing people to believe that this liquid I have in my hand right here in my Addict Athlete bottle is root beer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is root beer. And I'm convincing everybody else through force and through consistency and through gaslighting that what this is root beer. So much so that eventually, it might take some time, but I can get you to believe that this is no longer water. And then someone else walks by and they're like, hey, let me have a drink of your water. And you're like, this isn't water, this is root beer. And they're like, are you nuts?
What's wrong with you?
See, we are forced into that paradigm of believing something that's not. Like this, we've talked about this before, Marissa. When my family would say, okay, well, I love you, that always kind of gave me a pit in my stomach, because that meant that either A, we were moving, or B, mom was leaving for who knows how long. There was no follow through with it. The word became synonymous with disappointment and sadness. Sadness. Whereas your family was more in the mindset of you walked into the house and you could feel it, but no one ever really said it.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So you and I came to an agreement, and I'm not even sure if this is something we did on a therapy level, but something that we both noticed. Our agreement was what? Do you remember?
We hope to always show and say that we love each other, our kids, family, to be able to, show it in action, but also in word.
So what does it look like?
You have to spend time with each other. You've got to be able to invest, to communicate, to care. Find things that you can do for the other person that shows love and respect, and then be able to receive it back as well, and being able to say those things to each other.
It's kind of like this. The other night, I think it was Sunday night. We always gather the kids around right before we all go to bed, and we do our little family prayer. And sometimes it's 35 seconds, and sometimes it's a few minutes. This one lasted a little bit longer because we're like, hey, family, we want to talk to you about some stuff. And there was some extended family stuff that we wanted to talk about and just relay to them about some happenings. And as the kids are all sitting there and we're kind of delivering this news to them, I'm kind of saying, hey, did you guys notice this? Or let's talk about that.
Yeah.
They were all so in tune. And I kind of broke down for a minute, because I'm like, man, I love these little guys. Yeah. And when I'm telling them, I just love you kids so much. We are so lucky to have you guys here. They all kind of buoyed themselves up a little bit and stuff. And it was tangible. We felt it. We expressed it, and then we felt it.
Yeah.
And connecting those two things.
Yeah, how proud we were of them and the people they're becoming, and yeah, I think we need to do it more for sure.
I remember being at a funeral service for one of our athletes, and us pulling the kids aside and talking about how much it hurt. I'm like, can you tell how many people here are just in pain and how much it hurts?
Yeah.
They're all, yeah. I'm like, you know why? And they're like, why? It's like, because that's how much they love that person. They love that person so much that it hurts now.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? And I'm like, think about it, right? Like, that shows how much love there really is present. If you walked in and been like, all right, well, where's the buffet?
Yeah.
You'd be like, whoa, what's up with that, right?
Yeah.
So, again, pointing those things out is so crucial, because you withholding that, it's very counterproductive.
Yeah.
Truly loving allows you to be who you are authentically.
Yeah, for sure.
All of us, even the most, I guess, mean of the mean, love is truly the only thing that exists. And I know that's kind of a funny thing, but what does that mean? Well, some people have become so scorned and so hurt and so broken that they've created a life to push people away and to do things that are very counterproductive. But at the core of it, what do they truly want?
Love and connection.
They want love and connection.
And because they lost it or were hurt by it, or, even people passing away, like all of a sudden you put that protective barrier around to keep yourself safe. Mm-hmm. But in doing so, it hurts you more.
Yeah. It's hard to see, especially after, the pain and suffering of a relationship that might have gone sour, or losing a loved one like we've talked about, that we hold that stuff in. But what we want to do is to let that stuff out by conversing with someone that truly understands us, that we truly love. And we usually will gift that stuff only to the people that we know will love us back.
Yeah.
So if you don't have anyone like that, can you imagine how difficult and challenging it would be to not have someone that you can confide in, just to kind of let stuff go with? It's crucial. As we kind of wrap this up, because I can tell my voice is really starting to get lost here, there's this last part we talked about last night, talking about loving is living and living is loving.
Yeah.
And, the cool part about this, and this presenter that was talking to this group of kids, he gave this amazing story. And he said, when you look at me, and he had a few kids come up and look into each other's eyes. And, he said, I want you to say, when I look at you, fill in the blank. And this young lady stood up.
See.
One young lady stood up and she looked at him. She said, when I look at you, I see a smart and educated man. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, thank you. And then he turned around and looked at her and he said, what I see in you is myself. And everyone starts laughing.
Yeah.
What does that mean, right?
Very different.
So he says, look, where was I looking? And a bunch of hands shoot up, and one kid says, you're looking into her eyes. It's like, yeah, but go deeper. Next kid, look into her brain and into her heart. He's like, yeah, you're on the right track, but go deeper. Someone else shoots their hands up. It's like, you're talking to their soul.
Yeah.
He's like, closer and closer. And what he said is, I'm looking on what's on the inside. So then why would he say, when I see you, I see myself? Well, hold that thought for a minute, because what he said after this was pretty profound. He said, my kids, they don't even look like me. He said, their mother's Filipino, so they got the beautiful brown skin, they got the great jet black hair, and they don't look like me at all. But the only thing you can tell the difference between my kids apart, even for that matter, is that my son Jason has autism. Mm-hmm. And he went on to say that his son would come home from school and he would say, Dad, his dad said, what'd you have for lunch today? He's like, well, I had this, but I ate alone. Yeah. And because of some of the situations he found himself in, the kid had a hard time building relationships.
Yeah, didn't have a lot of friends.
Eventually, he joined a hockey team and, played hockey pretty well. And one game towards the end of a season, this team kind of come up with the boys. They kind of come up on their own. And they let Jason, his son, score a goal. Mm-hmm. And his dad was in the stand, and his dad realized what would happen, and he was so happy because he could see for the first time, he saw his son really feeling this experience.
Yeah.
And he said he rushed down to the coach, and he tapped the coach on the shoulder, and he said, hey, thank you so much for that. That was my son. And the coach said, don't thank me. He's like, you thank them, the boys out there that's come together and said, let's give this kid something that he's never gonna forget.
He needs a win.
He needs a win. And it hit him. It hit this guy. He said, those boys that acted so selfishly to give my son something that he'd never forget had no idea how it would impact me.
Yeah.
That residual effect, that drop in the water, the residual effect of how it would affect me, so much so that this guy's a public speaker and he spoke to a couple 100,000 children by now about that story specifically, about what happens when we treat someone with care, dignity, respect, and even love, what it does to the others in their lives.
It affects other people beyond that person.
So when he says to this young woman, I see me, it's because he sees the good inside of himself. And he sees the good inside of her. And we're all universally connected that way. And
they can connect, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, it's those kind of experiences. And I put into perspective, Marissa, what you and I do here on Team Addict to Athlete and even in the therapeutic relationships that we build. If you think about it, as we did just recently when we were attending the funeral services of a young man who was on the team and who we'd worked with in the past, who passed away a few weeks ago, the love that kid left in the ripple effects that are now echoes of those memories, it's tangible. And that's heartbreaking because, gone too soon.
Yeah.
And it puts questions into all of our minds. I know not just mine as a counselor and therapist of his, but also everyone that was there of the should-haves, the could-haves, the would-haves. And so this guy talks about make sure that when you're investing in relationships, and investing in relationships is simply just being communicative to another person.
Yeah.
Remember the ripple effects. The way you interact with that person is going to dictate how the others are going to interact with him. So you get some flipping road rage and you're flipping some people off and you're causing chaos and havoc. What's that going to do when that guy gets home to his family? He's going to be like, game on, kids, let's go play. Or is that going to have a ripple effect?
Them. Yeah.
Yeah. If we truly want to change the world, we got to change our attitudes and mindsets about this kind of stuff.
Because our life is more than just of ourselves. That's what his ultimate thing was, is it's what and everything that we do for others and how we affect the world around us. It's not just about us.
And how many times have our days gone by with the absence of doing some kind of act of love?
Yeah.
Or how many times has your day gone by that you've committed many opportunities to show love and not realized it? This podcast, what we're doing right here, it's an act of love. We love what we do. We love the people that we can connect with. We love the listeners that can find some kind of value.
Yeah.
And that's why we continue to do it. All the way down to holding the door for someone or, sending a text message to someone you haven't heard from a bit. These kind of the random acts of kindness or whatever, this random acts of love. It's not very difficult. But sometimes we're afraid to do it because we don't know how to receive it when it comes back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So long story short, athletes, you're not broken people. You might be off the rails, you might be off the path, but you're not broken. You still have the full capacity to love and to be loved. And if you'll start to incubate that and give it out, you'll have a major return on your investment.
Get more things back, and you're worth it.
100%. And so as we reach capacity for these kind of things, I think that we find more room and more ability. It's why I think in the recovery world, again, I see this all the time, especially in Utah, we have such an amazing grassroots level recovery process with so many organizations and groups because they love what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when you can share that, it will absolutely come back tenfold. So stage 1, falling in love. Stage 2, falling out of love. You want to get to stage 3, learning how to love and learning how to be loved. It's where it's at.
And sometimes that hardest one is allowing other people to love you too, so that you can get to the point of loving yourself and knowing that you're worth it.
Absolutely. So athletes, I hope that's been a little bit of a Valentine's Day hangover episode for you. We will, I guess, now circle St. Patrick's Day and come up with some kind of binge drinking episode or something, right? I don't know. But nonetheless, continue to share this podcast with those who need it. For you viewers, thank you so much for tuning in today. This will be a podcast that will be released tomorrow, Thursday. And in the meantime, if there's things that you're thinking of, things that you want us to address on this call-in show, shoot us a message. Our information can be found on addicttoathlete.org, or skip the middleman and go to Marissa, Marissa, at addicttoathlete.org.
Yeah.
If you send it to me, it may or may not ever find its way here.
Very true.
The ADHD in me kind of says, I'll respond to that, and I never do. So, put urgent next to the letters, I guess. But we thank you all for being here. We thank you for sharing this podcast. Keep an eye on our calendar events. We've got some cool stuff coming up on the horizon for Team Addict Athlete from our No One Left Behind half marathon happening in June, which is Utah's only team-based marathon.
Yeah.
You have to stay within a certain amount of distance between each of your person, and you're only as fast as your weakest link.
It's kind of like a 3-legged race.
Yeah, absolutely. But the experiences that you'll have and the connections that you'll make and the ability for you to help coach someone to get to that finish line is going to be memories worth making.
Find your team.
Yeah, it's open now. Registration can be found where, Marissa?
addictathlete.org under races.
Absolutely. So June in Spanish Fork, Utah. We'd love to have you guys come there. So keep an eye on the calendar of events as they approach. And athletes, until next time, continue to turn your mess into a message.
We'd like to thank our Patreon subscribers, the superfans Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Tracy Whitby, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Brett Frew, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, and Christy Case. We'd like to thank our rookie fans, Sione and Mary Inuk, Sherry Polson, Earl Dyer, and Wendell Wood. Our pro levels, Andrew Baird and Gary Thurston, and our champion level subscribers, the Robinson family, and Ron and Dee Loesch. Thank you, and please check out patreon.com/AddictTOAthlete. Join our Patreon program for exclusive content and exclusive swag from Addict to Athlete. Patreon.com/AddictToAthlete.